Good evening or afternoon or morning, depending on when you actually see this video. I'm making it this evening here on I believe it's Wednesday night, and I'm really kind of doing it apart from my main video channel of the Business Intercept, because this subject doesn't really have anything to do with business per se, but it's something that I definitely wanted to get out into the public sphere because this week we had something momentous happen, something that will change everybody's lives once they pick it up and put it in their hands. Yes, what could I possibly be talking about? I'm talking about this right here. Barack Obama's memoir. 2 or 3 years after it should have come out, it finally was released this week. A Promised Land. And I gotta tell you, personally, I have read nearly every single modern president's memoir that has been presidents in my lifetime. So a total of 5. Jimmy Carter's, Ronald Reagan's, George Herbert Walker Bush, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush. I've read all of their memoirs, and I've read them primarily because I find it's fascinating to read what these men themselves, who kind of, after they've been in office, sit down in a chair and kind of Monday quarterback their own plays, if you will. And it's fascinating to hear about the mistakes that they made, the missteps, the misconceptions they had. Basically, in each of their books, while certainly they're not overly critical of themselves, there's a lot of stuff in there about what they did wrong. Again, the missteps that they made. I mean, for instance, with Ronald Reagan, he talks about how he really miscalculated with Lebanon because he didn't understand the culture. He didn't understand that the people on the ground would not really see America as liberators. And because of that mistake, it caused a lot of heartache later on. And he talks about other things as well. Jimmy Carter talks about how his speech, the speech that made everybody think, what is wrong with this guy? And how that was a miscalculation in terms of how the public would react to it and how his political opposition would be able to use it against him. Bill Clinton obviously talks about the mistake that he made with having the intern in his office because he didn't really have any choice but to bring that up. But he talks about other things. George W. Bush obviously talks about the miscalculation that he made flying over New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina. And he talks a lot about his reasoning for not going, his reasoning for flying over, and how, even though he did it for a good reason, how it was a miscalculation. At the end of Barack Obama's presidency, I knew ahead of time that I was not going to read his book, that I would break from my own self-imposed habit, if you will. It's kind of like a personal law that I have to read the memoir of each president. I was going to break from that tradition because I knew, after watching him for 8 years, that whatever his memoir would be, it would not be self-reflective. He would not admit any mistakes. He would not place any blame on his own misconceptions or his own decision making. I knew well ahead of time that he would blame other people, Republicans, blame the Senate, blame the media, blame Fox News, blame racism. I knew that in 2016 without any shadow of a doubt. And here we are, 4 odd years later, in which this book has come out, and he's published an excerpt from it in the New York Times. He had a very long interview on 60 Minutes. He had a ponderous interview with the Atlantic magazine, and everything that's been reported on all three of those media blitz getting prepared for the release of his book has proven me correct. In fact, this picture for the Atlantic magazine, I want you to take a good look at it, because if you look at it and read the quote that's taken from that article and from the book itself, you will understand everything that's wrong with President Obama. Okay, and so let me just bring this up. Look at this right here. I'm not yet ready to abandon the possibility of America. What absolute arrogance that he's not willing to give up on America just yet. If you understand what he's trying to say underneath that line, again, you understand everything that was wrong with this man as president. As if America needs to prove anything to him. I mean, after all, we only elected the man to president twice. A black guy with a funny sounding name that rhymes with Osama. Got elected twice. And yet, there's a problem with America. And what's the problem with America? Because half of America, according to him, just couldn't take a black guy being in charge. In this article, he talks about how there was so much he couldn't do because he didn't have the votes. I mean, after all, after he won the election the first time, the Democrats only had 57 senators in the Senate and a majority in the House, but nothing got done because he didn't have the votes. It was Mitch McConnell's doing when the Republicans finally took control of the Senate. I mean, it might be my imagination. Maybe I'm remembering history incorrectly, but I recall Bill Clinton losing the House and losing the Senate in historic fashion in the midterm of his first term in office. And yet, Bill Clinton got a whole lot of shit done and watched his presidency blossom. As a result, he worked with Newt Gingrich. Newt Gingrich. Can you think of a more conservative outside of Rush Limbaugh during the 90s? I can't. They were mortal political enemies. And yet, Bill Clinton worked with him and a Republican Senate and a Republican House and got a whole lot done. But here we are with the black guy. And apparently the reason he wasn't able to get anything done is because we just didn't want him in charge. It's this kind of arrogance that I know permeates his book. And it's why, to be quite honest with you, it's a book that you should completely skip. If you want to know the truth, here's a little thing I put together on Photoshop that really examines the truth correctly. There's no doubt in my mind that his book is full of falsehoods, lies, excuses to detract from the piss poor job that he did as president. At the end of his presidency, I myself decided to write a book examining everything that he did in his 8 years in office, what the results were, what the decisions made and why were, and at the end of all of those decisions, everything was exactly as the title of my book is. He was a commander in failure. The things he said he wanted to get done and the reasons why didn't happen. The economy, international policy, Obamacare, taxes, the social construct of the country during his 8 years. He had specific goals, as spoken in his many interviews, and none of them came to fruition. And the question is why? My book goes into it. To close out this video, I'm going to include an audio excerpt of the book as an introduction for you. What I would recommend you do is skip this because you're not going to find out anything. The outsiders are required to examine his record because he lacks the humility to do it on his own. Something that none of the other presidents before him lacked. They were humbled at the end of their term by what they weren't able to do and the reasons why some of the things they tried to do did not work. Barack Obama knows no such humility. And it's part and parcel why he was a commander in failure. I hope you enjoy this excerpt. It's available on Amazon. The link will be in the description.
Yes, we can. 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 Yes, we can.
It's called morbid fascination. The mental state you experience when you rubberneck as you drive by a car wreck. It is the reason some folks flock to house fires or show up at murder scenes. It is how a movie like Faces of Death becomes a cult hit and spawns 6 sequels. It is our inability to look away from something we know to be terrible. We must look at it, examine it, process it, and understand it. It is the exact feeling I had on election night 2008. It permeated my heart, mind, and spirit as I walked into the grocery store and watched people pushing their carts with smiles and hope in their eyes. It is a feeling that clung to me like a lingering depression. For a year, it had been a part of my daily makeup as I watched friends, family, and America caught up in the euphoria of Barack Obama's hope and change and yes we can election rallies. I saw history play out in real time. America was going to elect its first black president. Given that the pain of the 60s and the civil rights movement were only 40 years removed, it would be a transformative event. The wounds of the past and America's great moral blight were about to be exorcised. I should have wept like many African Americans and African American civil rights leader Reverend Jesse Jackson, who unsuccessfully ran for president in 1984. I should have been bursting with hope and pride. Pride as an American, and yes, a deeper pride as a black man. Instead, I felt nothing. I stood transfixed by the historic moment, yes. But what kept me glued to my television as the election results were announced was my morbid fascination at the train wreck about to hit America. Why did I feel that way? Barack Obama appeared to be the pinnacle of black achievement in America. Columbia and Harvard educated, married to one wife with children, a wife who was not white or fair-skinned. Yes, the distinction matters for certain segments of the black community. There was no hidden side chick popping out during the campaign. Obama was not just well-spoken, he was charismatic and thoughtful too. He was a perfect prototype of a man who was black who could be president of the United States. What else could you want? What more could you ask for? As it turns out, a whole heck of a lot. A great deal more than Barack Obama had to offer. This is not and was not a popular view to take as a black person in America. African Americans are culturally hardwired to pull for the success of other blacks. Modern day blacks are freer than at any time in history, but for years we were not seen. Most blacks grew up without images of themselves splashed across the covers of magazines. Before the pouty lips of Hollywood megastar Angelina Jolie were called sexy, they were called big and ugly on black women. We did not see ourselves sprinkled on every television show as the likable or real smart character like gay characters enjoy as a matter of course today. The Cosby Show was revolutionary, not because it showed a life blacks did not have. There were good, loving black professional families who flowed in money. It's just that we never seen them on television. In sports, we dominated the NFL, except in the quarterback position, until Tiger Woods. Golf was a white man's sport as far as blacks were concerned. Tennis was not far behind. I could go on, but the point is that when you are not seen or feel like you have not been seen, you root for the person who looks like you when they show up. As a black person in America, even if you consider yourself conservative, a part of you automatically roots for other blacks. We see Tiger Woods, and without caring about golf, we want him to win. When Venus and Serena Williams hit the court, you root for them and sit down to take in the only tennis match you might watch all year. You want to see two black women succeed in a sport few blacks played professionally. We could be talking about sports, a TV show character, a businessman, a politician. It does not matter. If it is a place or position that many blacks don't occupy, you root for them. When an African American is the first black in anything, we want them to succeed. We take their side. Their success is emotionally our success. There are many orthodoxies within the black community that I personally have rejected. There are good reasons for this, and many will be discussed in this book. But I am not immune to this impulse to side with a black person who has broken a color barrier. When Venus and Serena began playing professionally, they became my favorites partly because they were black. That they were excellent and exciting players helped justify my enthusiasm. But if they had not been amazing on the court, I would have still pulled for them. Ditto for Tiger Woods on a golf course. And in college, it felt good to hear people back in the 90s talk about Colin Powell as a possible future president. So with all that said, in a world of accomplishments, in a world full of firsts, there is nothing higher than the idea of a black president. Nothing. Nothing. When you are by default rooting for the black person in any walk of life, the idea of not rooting for one, especially one who is running for US president, is blasphemy. It is inconceivable to most other blacks. Like garbled computer code, it does not calculate. So what was wrong with my mental programming? Why had I endured the stares of family and friends during Obama's 2-year campaign for president whenever I said anything negative about him? Why did I put up with being called a traitor, coon, Uncle Tom, brainwashed, and my personal favorite, being told, you hate yourself. You hate being black. I would like to give you an erudite answer steeped in some mind-altering point of view, but I cannot. I can make a case about the philosophical differences between a Democrat and the beliefs I hold dear that make me a conservative, but that is not the reason I never bought into the Obama hype. My reason was a simple requirement I used on all candidates for president. The presidency is called the executive branch because the president is in effect the CEO of the country. He cannot dictate decisions like a king. A president has the House and Senate he must work with just like a Fortune 500 CEO has a board of directors he must work with. The president, however, does set the direction. He is in charge. Every president must, I repeat, must have executive experience. They need to have overseen something, a city, a state, a large corporation, or a large nonprofit, a military division. Something where the buck starts and stops with them, because a president's decisions have consequences simply because they said yes or no. Before they take on the highest office in the land, they must bring to the job a deep understanding of the type of power they are about to wield. That only comes through a prior deep leadership experience. America's most successful presidents have all had in their backgrounds executive experience. They have been mostly former governors, but sometimes they were ex-military leaders. Obama was none of these things. Barack Obama announced his candidacy for president on February 10, 2007, less than 2 years after becoming a senator for the state of Illinois. By contrast, Hillary Clinton had been a senator for nearly 6 years. Before becoming a senator, Obama had served as a state-level senator in the Illinois State House, and before that, he was a part-time professor and full-time community organizer. Race, sex, and political affiliations aside, what in that list of job titles qualifies anyone to be president of the United States? Obama had barely shown up in the Senate before telling the world he was ready to be president. Obama was simply not qualified for the job. I do not say that as political hyperbole. It has nothing to do with the ridiculous idea that he was born in Kenya. He was not, and it would not make a difference if he had been. His mother is American, and therefore he is American. End of discussion. I am talking about his resume. He had not been a senator for even 2 years before announcing his intention to run for the highest office in the land. This is like getting a job as a retail clerk at Walmart, getting promoted to store manager, and then 1.5 years later telling the investors who hold Walmart stock that the best person to run a company is you. It defies logic. Here's another example. If I need a brain surgeon and your degree is in law, even if it's from an Ivy League school, you cannot help me. If you are a brain surgeon and I need help with beating charges for a crime I did not commit, you are still of no use to me. The importance of executive experience is that when you are in charge, stuff must get done. Governors can, will, and do argue with their opposition, but as executives, they must balance their budget, maintain the state infrastructure, and handle 100 other pressing matters. They do not have the luxury of arguing endlessly. They must make stuff run well. That prepares you for being president. Being a senator for 5 minutes does not. Considering this, you may be wondering where I come down on the matter of our new president, Donald Trump, who had no political experience prior to running for office. In fact, you're probably burning to know the answer. Well, I will answer this question, but later in the book, because this book is not about President Trump. It is about Obama's 8 years in office. But here's a bit of foreshadowing. Our new president met one of my qualifications for the executive office. Though let's just say his run for the post held a morbid fascination as well. But back to Obama. He simply hadn't amassed the skills necessary for the job he was aiming to get. It gives me no pleasure to say this now,
or in 2007 when he was running. I do not hate myself as a black man. No conservative black person does. We want America to succeed, and we are hardwired to want a black person to succeed. When an African American is one of only a few in any position and you are black, it is more frustrating and painful to see them fail than it is to watch a white person fail. I feel confident in saying that every black conservative in America who has ever spoken about President Obama would have loved desperately to see him have the presidency that Ronald Reagan or Bill Clinton achieved. Yes, President Obama had a high IQ. Yes, he went to good schools. Yes, he appears to be a good father and husband. And yes, he can deliver a rousing and emotionally stirring speech. Iconic words and phrases like "yes, we can" and "hope and change" catapulted him into the Oval Office. Obama set the world on fire with his campaign. His speeches uplifted most and caused a few people to pass out from political ecstasy. On election night, he got 99% of the black vote. He got white Republicans to switch and vote for him. He won the popular vote by more than 10 million cast ballots. He captured 365 electoral college votes. Frankly, he dominated election night. And for many blacks, he became an instant saint. Before he even stepped into the Oval Office and sat behind the resolute desk that John F. Kennedy had first worked at in that storied room, they placed him on the same altar as Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, or Marcus Garvey. Even Nelson Mandela. So, how has Obama worked out for his worshipers? Are African Americans better off today than before he took office? Is America a better place? How are the millions of white Republicans who put him in office feeling about their vote in 2008? Has America moved into a post-racial time? If you watch the news, these questions seem absurd. The hope and change Obama espoused did not come to pass. So what happened? Obama had a mandate. He had the emotional heart of the nation. Blacks cried the night of his election, and so did many others. Where did Obama's promise go, and why? As it turns out, it didn't go anywhere. Obama embodied the title of this book. He was a failure. It's the why behind his lack of success that I will attempt to answer in Commander in Failure. The why provides lessons for future presidents and leaders. It douses the fire of racial excuses and myths of Republican intransience. It will tell the tale and do so from the view of Obama's natural constituency. Obama's singular role in American history is because of his blackness. Make him white, and he would not have been elected president. His success and failures are different for the black community. The hopes, dreams, and expectations piled onto Obama by others of his race are different. His blackness made and makes being critical of him a cultural grenade. If you are black, you were supposed to support President Obama. Being critical of him makes you the black sheep in the community, a racial and cultural pariah. Who wants to deal with that? I certainly did not. But stark reality punched me dead in the face on election night 2008. And the years after have proved that feeling correct. I have no choice but to speak the truth about our first black president, our commander in failure. What you just listened to was an excerpt from the book Commander in Failure, available at Amazon.com. Get your copy now.